So by now, probably more than once in your life, you've heard and used the term, the only constant is change. So perhaps, Mike, would you agree with me that that phrase is more relevant than ever?
Yeah, I would say so. Certainly we've seen change within the real estate market over the past couple of years, more so than at any time in the 17 years that I've been in the real estate industry, which has always seen its ups and downs. But
Seasonal cycles, you mean?
seasonal cycles. There are changes that repeat, whereas in the last couple of years, we've seen suddenly prices started to go through the roof. We started to see competition, multiple offers on the same property, the demand going up and up. Well, the inventory was not able to satisfy that demand, and that's taken us to a whole new place.
So with that in mind, I mean, I guess this whole uncertainty and unpredictability has left, I would say, in its wake, thousands, if not tens of thousands of people wondering what's next. You know,
for sure.
What am I going to plan for? What does retirement look like? How am I going to buy my first home?
Yeah, well, the subject of real estate and real estate financing is one that's on the tongues of everybody a lot. You go to the coffee shop, whether you're talking about it with your friends or you're being asked about it because you're in the business, you can hear at the next table people are talking about, what's my home worth, where's it going, what's happening in the market, what did the house down the street sell for?
Similarly, I've got clients coming in to me saying, so what do I do next?
Yes.
How do I plan? How do I plan
people
for
want
this?
to know. I mean, your home is, for most people, it's your greatest expenditure. It's your biggest investment that you have. And you want to know where you are. You want to know where your comfort zone is. There's always talk within the media that, we're just around the corner from a big crash. And that scares people. People want to know, are we really there? If you're looking to buy in, do you want to buy in now knowing there's a possibility that house prices are going to be half as much a year from now as they are now? It's very unlikely, and statistically and historically in Canada, it's a very small likelihood that we would see a crash like that. But I think we may see a leveling off. But again, change is the new normal here. And so which way that change takes us is a great subject for conversation. It's part of the reason you and I decided to sit down and maybe put together a show and talk to people about some of those questions.
And I think that's the key. I mean, I think the value of this series will hopefully be us discussing the topics that are on the top of people's minds, either at home, at the kitchen table, or in the coffee shop, at work. I mean, undoubtedly more than ever, people are wondering what's next.
Yes, for sure they are.
So I think one of the biggest things that have changed for us is people used to walk into my office and sit and meet with us and say, okay, give me the steps on how it is that I'm going to go from where I am to home ownership or to a different type of home ownership. And I think perhaps many of those steps have changed. There is no predictability. So the alternate to that, or to our new structure, our approach really isn't about how do I buy this $500,000 home or how do I buy this bungalow, but it's how do I prepare myself in general for life. It's a much deeper conversation.
Yes.
Because there are so many changes.
Yeah.
How do I work with you as a professional to ensure that I am prepared for all of the things that I might anticipate going forward?
For sure. And the product itself has changed in terms of value and cost, but also the process for attaining it has changed, and the government has played a role in that too with some of, like, you tell us, what are some of the things you've seen within the last couple of years that have either raised the bar or just made it a little more of a challenge for people to get into the market?
Well, from a lender's perspective, Mike, I would tell you this. I would say it's not even raising the bar, it's the constantly changing bar.
Yes.
There used to be really a relatively predictable set of programs that someone could find themselves categorized in terms of whether they're a new Canadian or a first-time home buyer, or a program for a self-employed individual, and you could generally lay out a structure for someone to qualify from. With the ever-changing bar and the ever-changing stress tests that are out there in the marketplace, Again, it's not so much how am I going to fit you into a program. I've never worked with my clients that way to try and pigeonhole them into a category. For us, ultimately it's been about preparation. Are you prepared to take on the responsibilities with home ownership? Are you prepared for when you're asked to satisfy a certain condition or criteria?
Yes.
Can we help you predict or pre-plan for what some of those questions are going to be, and can you satisfy those confidently? The last thing that we want on our end of the equation as a broker and a brokerage is to set a client up for a scenario where they're not going to be able to manage it in 3 to 6 months.
Yep.
And so it's about building that relationship.
And how that's changed from my end as a realtor is the lender was always considered the last step in the process.
Right.
You went out there, you shopped, you found that home. If you were smart, you did a little bit of work to pre-qualify yourself, or maybe even have yourself pre-approved for financing up to a certain term. But it wasn't until somewhere near the end that you really got serious about financing. Do you think that's changed, and how would you think that's changed?
Well, I think that's what we're going to talk about in the next segment.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about what has changed. What was it like, just to give our viewers and folks at home an idea of what's changed from 2 years ago to today, as recent as 2 years ago, really, to today, who we should set ourselves up with, and making sure that we've got a great team of people around us to help us plan and prepare.
Well, let's explore that a bit then, Arif. The timeline for buying a house that we focus on the finance, and we always leave it to the end. How much longer a process is that now? What's the responsible amount of time people should allot for focusing on the money side of buying a home before they get out there in the trenches looking?
Well, listen, I think what you touched on earlier was key. Traditionally, there'd been a relationship, decide that you want to buy a home, go out, meet a realtor, find that perfect home, and then all of a sudden figure out how your financing is going to work. I think the critical component for any homeowner or anybody changing their scenario in life should be preparedness. So I don't think it's a who comes first as much as it is work with a team and explore preparedness. Be prepared so that you know what you're walking into the marketplace with. Now, that in itself poses a challenge, if you will, Mike, as we just finished talking about. There's so many outside influences. We've got the pressures from the GTA that really actually started out in BC with the whole idea that somehow foreign buyers were influencing the marketplace, and then our local government here provincially decided, well, then they better be prepared and jump all over something that hasn't yet really happened. So you've got some components that need to be addressed. How does that marketplace affect our local and regional marketplace here? Things that need to be considered are, who's in the marketplace. Now it's no longer just trading homes inside Barrie and Simcoe County, but you've got more migration from
influences are coming from outside.
Influences.
And that in itself is a show just to discuss some of those influences that are coming from the GTA. It's the largest metropolitan region in the whole country, and it's probably the most impactful, certainly on our region.
So you've got natural influences of people moving from the GTA, and now you've got the government's response to that by trying to suppress or to ensure that there's some stress tests in place. So when we come back from the break, let's explore that a little bit more, what some of those influences are, and then we'll also pick up who you should really be building your team with.
Excellent. And we're back. And before the break, you and I were talking about the changes in the market. We were talking about the timeline specifically that someone needs to allot to their financing and preparing for financing a property. So
the best advice, honestly, Mike, is preparedness. I mean, you use the word, and it's the key. So many factors are changing, so many factors have changed that people need to throw away any idea that they had gotten used to before in the previous markets, if you will. Preparedness is the key. As opposed to shooting first and asking question later, it really is about preparedness. So one of the things that we would guide our clients along the lines of is making sure that you can, well, here's another factor actually. We're in the world of dealing with regulators. So they have boxes that need to be checked for audit purposes. Financing of illegal business is now more than ever a topic. So anti-money laundering,
FINTRAC. All of it.
FINTRAC. So regulators and lenders need to be able to justify how they're doing a piece of business. So we're going to be looking at where did your down payment come from, where did your deposit come from. We're going to be scrutinizing employment a lot more. These are just the realities. But the other reality that we need to look at is that household income in our region hasn't necessarily kept the pace with the valuation of homes, the trends that are housing prices are rising. So it's something that also homeowners and prospective homeowners need to be looking at.
And with that, I think there's another dynamic that's coming into play more and more for your side of the industry, and that is people needing to be creative. Not everybody can come in with their sole income or their sole family income and qualify for that home. People are bringing other people on board. People are doing creative things. People are tapping into their RRSPs or getting a loan from a parent or leveraging this or that. Is that making the job more interesting
for the
mortgage broker?
I'd certainly say it's making the job more interesting. It's certainly making the necessity or the guidance or advice to be working with a key series of partners, being a lawyer, for example, and an accountant. Just people who can help you set the pace for where you need to be. In terms of the down payment, I mean, we still have the traditional elements of a gifted down payment. We still have, here's another thing that's changing that maybe people forget, is that the norm of why someone's buying a home is changing. We've got change in life position. We have first-time home buyers, absolutely, but we also have a demographic of people who are going through marital separation. That's not necessarily something that you can be planning for, so that is a little bit more of a necessity to address that scenario. I mean, I don't think anybody gets married with the anticipation that they're going to be getting separated, but when it happens, it's something that we need to be able to work with our clients on. How can we help go through that transition? So there's that. There's possibly a change in employment status that could trigger the need to change position. It could be for the positive, or maybe not the most positive scenarios that people need to be addressing. So I think what is key for people is to put that good team of people around them, and we'll go into that shortly, but not to be taking what is arguably, as you said earlier, a major life decision, not to take that lightly, to put some good time and effort into considering what are all these ramifications with home ownership.
All good points, Arif. And change, again, when I look at it, there's changes from within the real estate industry for a realtor, there's changes for the mortgage broker, and all the other members of the team are having to reevaluate and how they approach the market. But there's also another change that I've witnessed over the time I've been doing this. And as a homeowner and as a realtor, I'm seeing this. And that's our perception of what is the home, what represents home within Simcoe County. There was a time when townhouses or multi-unit living, it was frowned upon, but it was not the priority. The single-family home on the 40, 50-foot lot was the goal and the expectation. But now we're revisiting, and it's a new generation that's coming in who's taking a look, but even people who may have owned the bigger home are now taking a second look at some of the multi-unit product, and some of the product that's being offered is a lot better, and there's a lot more choice within the region. So the whole concept of real estate and home ownership is evolving in the region, and it's partly due or mainly due to increases in values.
Yeah, increases in values, affordability, demographics, where people are at what stage they are in their life, empty nesters, finding an ability to downsize, but at the same time wanting to, we used the term before, age in place, and that could mean bringing on a second suite or bringing on an apartment, if you will. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the product that builders are producing, they're building more medium density, so if you will, the towns, the walk-ups, the stacks, the semis, the condos, they are going to play a factor. One of the things that I think it's important for people to realize is that the family unit has changed. The makeup of the family unit has changed for some, if not many, but also just the influences on affordability, what we see in other parts of the world, what you see in Europe, what you see in Asia, what you see in other major metropolitan areas is much more of the community living, which could be in a condo or in a townhouse style.
There is a whole new generation of homebuyers out there, and they're not looking for necessarily the 25-foot, 3,000 square foot home with the separate living room and family room and den and the dining room. They like some of the tighter living that's being offered through some of the multi-unit product that's out there. And within the Barrie region specifically, there's a lot of that new product coming on board, and the demand for it is there, and it's selling fast. And perhaps that's a shift that's going to take hold and continue on looking forward.
So what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that not only are we dealing with market influences, pressures of migration and new people coming into the region, we're also talking about a change in expectation or what normal was or what Simcoe County and Barrie really looked like from 20 years ago to today.
Because 20 years ago, if I may, the family unit did its own thing within the home. They traveled together, they went out for dinner together, and the home was their community for much of their time. Whereas now there's more of a community living element. People are out of the house as much or more than they're in the house now, compared with 20, 30 years ago, our parents' generation, the generation before. And I think that may play into it. They look at the home more as the place to go to hang your hat, go to sleep, and regroup, to get out and do it all over again, rather than to live your life.
So earlier what we were talking about was the fact that so much has changed in the last couple of years that people aren't really sure what to plan for, what comes next,
Absolutely.
and how to be prepared. So when we come back from the break, what we're going to do is let's talk about who the right team is to surround you with. You know, in any given scenario, you've got your professionals, you've got a dentist, a doctor, a chiropractor, something like that. Well, why shouldn't that apply to the idea of home ownership and understanding what your financial position is? So let's talk, Mike, about who to bring the team, who to bring in as a team, and who the right people to have around you, surrounding
why
you.
it's important.
Why it's important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're back, and what we've been talking about for much of this episode is the changes that are happening in the market and being prepared. That's the key, is being prepared either to make a purchase for yourself or for investment, or even preparing for selling. And there's a number of people who you want to have on your team there. And some of those people, we've made a little bit of a list here. Your realtor, first and foremost, maybe not first and foremost, but it's as important as any of the others on the list. I don't want to artificially inflate, but it's your facilitator, your negotiator, it's your eyes and ears out there. And the realtor's going to be with you to keep you on track and hopefully lead you to some of the other members of the team that are going to be important to you. The mortgage broker, and I'll leave that to you.
Well, I think one of the things that really comes to mind for me is traditionally home ownership and the idea of it, for example, has been an exciting idea. It's been an exciting venture to get into. And while that still remains true today, and it always should, I mean, you should fall in love. You should, unless it's an investment property, I hope you don't fall in love.
It's a passion for Canadians.
It should be passionate. It absolutely should. I mean, it is. Everybody keeps saying it's your single greatest investment that you're going to have. So yes, you should be excited about it. You should be enthusiastic about it. But I really think if there's anything that I want people to go away with, it's almost everything you thought you knew before that was almost systematic about the process of home ownership.
The way your parents did it and their parents did it.
Parents have always had great advice.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing for sure I let people know is, everybody said to parents always used to say, if you don't have cash, don't buy it. Well, you know what? The reality today is maybe that's true, but you better know how to use credit, for example. And so I think it's important to work with a financial planner, an accountant, a broker, a lawyer to make sure that you're able to anticipate the questions that are going to be asked of you for qualification. It is so important to know that when you're getting into whatever type of home ownership it is, and that question could be, do I stay and renovate, or do I purchase or downsize? That's a very important question.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to work with people in that circle, whether it's a realtor, a broker, an accountant. It could be a home inspector as well, to look at what options are available. What is the condition of the home that you're either selling or looking at buying, home staging. There are so many things that we can get into about how to properly market your property.
Exactly.
So before you go in and put pen to paper, it's important to sit and meet with each of these people to make sure that you're getting the best guidance, so that the challenging questions can be asked of you as a potential home buyer. Be prepared to answer the questions for yourself.
Have the tools in place to make the best possible decisions.
Absolutely.
As you're going through the process. Lawyers are important to the process, making sure there's a lot of things that can go sideways during the course of a purchase or sale. And a lawyer even prior to the completion of the deal, just to make sure the property has no liens on it, to do credit checks and to check your own background, to make sure you're going to see your way clearly through this transaction.
You know what, Mike, let me jump in there, because I think that that's a key element. We saw, if nothing else, in the last few months, certainly in the headlines, scenarios of people, whether they were taking good or not as great advice from somebody saying, go in and waive all your conditions.
Yes.
The value of a lawyer is that third party who's not personally vested in the transaction. They're not making a commission one way or another. They don't care what home you live in or what home you buy. They just want to know that you're well protected.
Yes.
So speaking with that lawyer to say, you know what, here's the guidance that I've been giving. Do you have any thoughts for me on that? So whether it's about taking clean title or whether it's about the idea of waiving a condition and what are the implications of that, especially when you're in a more competitive marketplace.
If a home doesn't close, then there's going to be people looking to cover their losses and their damages, and that may point back to you if you don't have all your ducks in line. And that's where a lawyer certainly comes in, to be sure you're doing that. Your accountant, perhaps in preparing your financial end of it, and you could probably speak to that as well or better than me, where an accountant may come in, not just a mortgage lender, but an accountant who's looking after your finances.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what was important is that the idea of today's show was to talk about who we're really going to be talking about over the course of the series, right?
Yeah, people we may bring on board to have this discussion who know better than you and I.
Absolutely. By no means, and I let all my clients know this, I may have a familiarity with a topic, I have an understanding of a topic, we deal with it on a certain on a daily basis, but for the purpose of the show and the guidance that you're asking me for, it is important that you're speaking with an actual accountant or an actual lawyer. I can give you some things to think about, I can set you up with questions that you may anticipate having to answer or address, but I'm not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't want to pretend to be one of those. So we're going to bring those types of people onto the show for our viewers, so that they can, hear firsthand from what some of the experiences are, and hear some good guidance from a lawyer, for example, on some scenarios that they've gone through.
And as a bit of a plug for what may be our next show is we will be bringing a home stager and a home inspector onto the show, because there is value in having both of those people working with you in preparing to sell a home and working your way through a purchase or sale.
So Mike, I think one of the things that viewers at home may be wondering is, years ago, a lot of these members really weren't thought of. They weren't necessarily part of the team or part of the transaction. And I think we want to pose those tougher questions, if you will, to the home stager, to the inspector. Why are you a critical part of the process? Why should you be part of the team? How do you justify the fee or the time and energy put into the idea of staging a home with a home inspector? Why should I not be waiving one? Or do I get a home inspector before I even sell my house? Do I want to have a pre-sales listing inspection? And why is that perhaps a good idea?
Well, some thoughts on that with regard to the home inspection, with the pressure to sell fast, with competing offers and that, the temptation to waive that clause or not put a home inspection clause in altogether without actually doing the home inspection. It's tempting, but it's dangerous because every person has a right to know what they're buying into. It's not just about winning the bid and getting the purchase. You want to know exactly what it is you're buying. And I worked for 18 years as a building contractor, and quite cocky when I came into real estate, figuring I knew everything, and then go in there and assist or at least accompany some of these home inspectors and realize I didn't see that, I missed that. And that's someone who has some experience in the business. So for the average person who does not have any or little sense of knowledge of construction and maintenance of a home, that home inspector is a valuable component and a valuable person on that team. And on the home stager, again, going back 20 years ago, people never staged their homes. You put it on the market and you sold it. But it's a far more competitive market now. In fact, right at the moment where we're at now, we've returned to quite high volumes of homes for sale right now. So if you're going to list your average bungalow in the south end of Barrie right now, chances are there's 10, 20 or more homes that those people are also going to want to see. So anything and everything you can do to make that home stand out is going to make a difference. And home staging is one way that people are able to set themselves apart.
So when we come back next week, I mean, we're going to have a couple of guests on, and I think that's what I want to do. Is I think we should really pose these questions, and we're going to ask the inspector or the accountant or the lawyer. People, our job is not really to give that advice. Our job, what I want to do, what I want to see us do with this show coming forward, is bringing guests onto the show who have that level of expertise.
Yes.
They've got that level of expertise that they can give us real life examples and show us the implications of how things went one way or another. So what I'd love to do is I'd love to open up to our audience, to our viewers at home, the opportunity to send us your thoughts, your questions, and your feedback, your comments to the email address at the bottom of your screen. Mike and I look forward to seeing you next week with our guests, and if you have any questions that you want us to address with them directly, certainly feel free to send those in, and we'll see you next week.